Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and let's talk about the Sony a6400. This guy. You know I did that just because I want to try the autofocus. We're here in San Diego, and I've only had it for 24 hours. So let's do first impressions, and I'll cut straight to the chase. By the way, I'm looking at my notes because normally I don't have enough time at these kinds of events to really think through, do all the writing that I want, do all the rehearsal that I want, have the lighting that I want, have the teleprompter that I have now come to use. So instead I'm going to refer to my notes a lot. But here's the bottom line. It is a deceptively good upgrade. Better than I thought even 12 hours ago. And to my utter astonishment, we are now seriously considering making this, the a6400, the next camera purchase for us, trading in our a6300 to make it our B camera. But I'm taking the time to go through these notes because I think it's really important to be clear what I think I'm seeing and why I think I'm seeing it, and there's a lot to cover, so I'm going to try to really blow past this. And again, forgive me for any omissions, faux pas, and other stuff. So I want to start with the beginning, which was yesterday's live stream, because the first point I want to make is that Sony has the industry's clearest articulation of where it is today, where it wants to be, and how it proposes to get there, and this is a critical competitive advantage. But let's get into it because there are specific things that I want to bring up. After the obligatory stellar opening sequence showing how their cameras and gear are being used, it's just gorgeous, it's adventure, it's extreme, the colors, amazing. Sony immediately went on to take a little bit of the wind out of Canon and Nikon's sails when it comes to their new lens mounts. And I think they did it very effectively by showing Sony's current E-mount being used across compact mirrorless APS-C, full frame, and Cine 35 all the way up to the Venice, which is used in Hollywood. This morning, Sony's execs went into further detail about what can and cannot be done with their lens mounts, and my take, as it was actually in Photokina, is that I don't think there's anything that Sony's lens mount can't be used to do that the Canon and Nikon mounts can. Equally true with the L-mount alliance. Full stop. That's kind of it. For Canon and Nikon, their new mounts are a big deal because now they can do what Sony has been doing for the last 9 years. And what Leica, interestingly enough, with their original screw mount, then M mount, then L mount even now, has been doing since 1925 because they have not had to contend, with the rare exception of the R series, say, mirrors. But it is something that Canon and Nikon are just beginning to do, which is designing their optics for short flange distances, again, also unfettered by a mirror. B, Sony dropped some market share numbers, which make it clear why Canon and Nikon felt they had no choice but to get full-frame mirrorless cameras out soon. Sony was #1 in global full-frame sales across type, mirrorless, and SLR by unit volumes and revenue for full year 2018. Although they didn't talk about APS-C numbers, which is, of course, what the a6400 is, and that is interesting in and of itself. Hold that thought. C, Sony articulated once again their 5 fundamentals, which have driven their success in the full-frame market, though this list has evolved over time. And those 5 are lens, image quality, speed, battery life, wasn't there at the beginning, compact and lightweight. But hold that thought, we're going to come back to that as well. They also introduced a new theme. They didn't call it a fundamental, but call it the sixth man, the Phil Jackson of the 69-70 New York Knicks, the clutch player coming off the bench to help close the game. Speed times AI. Hold another thought. How you doing? Brain okay? Still with me? It's worth it. D, only then did they announce the really big news that they're bringing those 5 fundamentals to the APS-C world and revealed the a6400. With that kind of buildup, this was really exciting to me. And why? About 20 hours ago, I was first really excited and then honestly kind of lukewarm about the camera. But let's get into it and hold that thought. First, there's a good reason why Sony named the camera the a6400, because it's the right name. It slots smack dab in the middle of the a6300 and a6500. To it, it has the same body and controls as the a6300 and a6500. The same menu system, the same ports, the same PEZ-sized battery, the same EVF, the same sensor, same frame rates, codec, yada, yada, yada. All of which, I'll say right now, were revolutionary in 2015, instrumental in my decision to leave the Canon fold for Sony, selling off my Canon 5D Mark II, a pile of L-glass, including the 3 Trinity zooms and a couple of fast primes, but have become less impressive with the latest models from Fujifilm and Panasonic. Hold this thought too. And the a6400 giveth with one hand and taketh away with the other. The a6400 adds the flip-up screen for vloggers and selfies that neither of these other models have. And I'm using that camera right now and staring at myself just above the screen. It's a little bit odd, and it's way too far for me to really tell anyway, which is why I tether, but okay. It now supports an interval timer that neither of the other two have. Most importantly, it adds the processor, the Bions X found in the A9, and the updated autofocusing algorithms of the A9's new firmware, allowing it to do the one thing I thought was most interesting about the camera 24 hours ago, what Sony calls real-time tracking. Except not quite. We got clarification at a meeting this morning in response to what ended up, as is so often the case these days of announcement flurries, yesterday's mismanaged expectations. So hold that thought too. On the other hand, the a6400 omits the IBIS of the a6500, and for a number of us, that's a big miss. Although, to be fair, it also omits the a6500's price premium over the a6300, which priced at $900, that is, the a6400 is $900, is only $100 more than the a6300. But on the third hand, what is now more exciting than anything else, at least for us here at Three Blind Men and an Elephant, is that the 30-minute recording limit is suddenly, without fanfare, gone. No overheating issues. This is huge. We'll come back to this. Second, how does the a6400 perform? Well, first, like an a6300, the autofocusing and image quality of the a6000 series have always been staggering for their price and size, what I call punching way above the weight class. In fact, as I said, the a6400 sensor is the same as the a6300 and a6500, which is great on the one hand even today, 3 years after the a6300 launched, but in Sony dog years puts it well into middle age. And like an a6300 also means no IBIS. The ergos and menu system, as I said, are the same. The design choices behind the camera are the same, and thus informed by what I will call the same weaknesses in industrial design and usability, which, in the case of accessing real-time AF tracking, is about as Rube Goldberg-esque as one dare fear. Now, I want to be clear. At this point, I'm not so much criticizing Sony. I don't mean to take a chunk out of anyone's hide on this. They're simply doing too much that is really great right now. Their engineering is superb, and I really like the company and the people. As calling out a hard reality, which has long-term repercussions for its success in the APS-C space. And to say, of course this is the case, because usability is not one of the 5 fundamentals. So guys, you know I think you're great, but I really encourage you to make usability the 6th fundamental. Another repercussion of this absence is, unfortunately, a flip-up screen which is partially blocked by the EVF's iCup, and which makes it impossible to use an external mic like the perennial favorite, the Rode Video Mic Pro, or the Video Pro, or the, what is it, the Video Mic Me? Yeah, that's it, the Video Mic Me. So, what you're hearing right now is the mic onboard camera, but This is what it sounds like when I'm recording separately into an iPhone. It's always important to be candid because as we enter 2019, Fujifilm's X-T3 and laugh if you like, but Panasonic's GH5, G9 have far superior accessibility and user experiences. So do the Leica TL2 and CL, and at least in the Panasonics down at the level of the GX85 and the GX9, IBIS. Although those guys don't have a flippy screen or the flip-up screen that this camera does. But then again, Sony APS-C cameras don't have the robust crop sensor lens line either that these guys do. So hold that thought, but just for a minute or two longer. When we turn to real-time tracking AF, results with the a6400 so far have been mixed. It was a brilliant, unflappable lock for walking while talking. Really perfect for gimbal shots, actually, yet could not lock on basketball players at all in this early test with the crop sensor 18-135 at 3.5 to 5.6.
Okay, I'm tracking 38. Lost him already, he's gone.
Put simply, the a6400 real-time tracking is not as good as that of the A9, in spite of using the same algorithms and similar processor. Period. Dead stop.
Yep, go for it. Tracking.
The A9's sensor is also much newer, much faster, and as with all mirrorless cameras, now the single most important part of the gestalt. The A9 is also 5 times the price, so let's not get piggy. But it's also a function of the glass. Because when I swapped out that lens for the 24 to 72.8 G Master, it seemed to work a little bit better, but come on, I reduced the complexity of that shot tremendously, and I went wide. So, in point of fact, I haven't yet properly isolated the components of the a6400's real-time tracking AF performance other than what I've just mentioned. And again, the takeaway is, it is not as good. Which means it's time really to go back to the 5 fundamentals. Because third, with all of this said, and circling back to relieve you of the burden of holding all of those thoughts, taken on Sony's own terms of the 5 fundamentals and its goal of bringing those 5 fundamentals to the APS-C line, the a6400 appears to be, when viewed from a sufficient number of angles, and 5 seems to be a pretty good number, certainly better than 3 blind men, well, you decide. Lenses. With this announcement, did Sony change the fact that the only fast crop sensor primes today are the 50-1.8 and 24-1.8? No. Why is this critical? Because when you have a smaller sensor taking in less light to begin with, you're compounding the challenges the camera faces when you then attach a lens, like the variable aperture 18-135 with its maximum of f5.6 at the long end. I mean, we're talking about a 4-stop advantage compared to 1.4. That is, shooting at, say, ISO 6400 versus shooting at ISO 400. And we really saw those differences in noise when we shot yesterday morning. Or shooting 1/1000th of a second versus 1/60th, and we saw that too. Which is why the idea of bringing 5 fundamentals to APS-C, beginning with a lens line as superb as their full-frame lineup is, such a mouth-watering ambition, unfortunately unrealized in yesterday's announcement. Image quality. There's been no change here, right? As I mentioned a few moments ago, 3 years in Sony time is practically a lifetime for sensor development. Speed, no change. Battery, no change. Compact and lightweight, no change. And there's been no change in usability. It's not just the menu system. It means you still can't access the exposure triangle, shutter speed, aperture, and ISO without at least some software intervention, even when you customize a camera. It needs a second dial. All of which, at the end of the day, leaves us for a moment where precisely? Well, here's the rub. For us here at Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and subject to further testing, and in spite of the downsides I've just articulated, this may very well be, as I said at the beginning, our next camera purchase, upgrading from our current a6400. For the kind of work we do, commercial, documentary, YouTubing, it's closing in on being a perfect B camera, where it's typically on a tripod like it is now, or a gimbal. In fact, I was about to sell our Crane M. It's been gathering dust for well over a year, but now I think I may keep it for a while. If this camera had been around when the GH5 was announced, we might never have gone to micro four thirds at all. For everyone else, as a casual vlogger's camera, street camera, travel camera, family camera, it's a nice upgrade from the a6300 at roughly the same price. As a B cam for Sony shooters like us, it's actually a very tough combination to beat, again at the price, in large measure because you'll likely already have paid for a bunch of glass, and likely that glass will not have been consumer grade glass, and so the sensor won't have to struggle quite as hard. In other words, no, the a6400 is not a mini A9, and if that expectation hadn't been there, I think we would have been fine from the very beginning. Instead, think of the a6400 as the opening round of a new salvo from Sony, driven by algorithms and processing power, which is exactly what Sony should be doing, and which every other camera manufacturer should be doing big time as well. But until Sony addresses usability and the user experience at a fundamental level, and until it truly delivers on the 5 fundamentals as fully at the APS-C level as it does the full frame, it remains vulnerable to Fujifilm and Panasonic especially, which makes one wonder where the APS-C camera line truly fits into Sony's priorities still. We'll see soon enough. But now, we need to go out and shoot. So, see you soon.